Well, welcome back. This is Stocks to Watch as we explore Draganfly, pioneering transformative drone solutions that define industry standards, empower global organizations, and safeguard lives. Trading on the CSE and the NASDAQ under DPRO. We're privileged to be joined and discuss with CEO Cameron Chell. First and foremost, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, a pleasure to get you on. And I just want to dive into this because the drone market is highly concentrated with a small number of kind of dominated players. Where are you seeing the strongest traction today, and which of your drone solutions are kind of winning businesses?
Yeah, so for sure, the largest market that's on fire right now is military. So obviously, propagated by the conflict in Ukraine, the demonstration of the use cases, the success of drones, and now the necessity of drones, you basically see every military in the world, not just because of geopolitics, but because the effectiveness of drones now really, designing all their concepts of operations, frankly, around drones. So the military market is the most dominant market in the market, available in the globe today. We're very fortunate as a company. We've been around for 27 years. To my knowledge, we're the oldest drone company in the world, certainly in the small category one, category two drones. And so we've got a full product lineup of drones. To my knowledge, again, there's only one other company that has a fully integrated line of drones like we do, and that would be DJI. A lot of the other North American startups, and when I say startups, these are 5 to 7 year old companies as compared to say the 27 years that we've been around. They've got one drone, or they might have two drones, or a one drone variant type of scenario. But for us to have a full product lineup that's built into concepts of operations that can meet military demands, we're fairly uniquely positioned.
Yeah, very interesting. And I mean, how have concerns around supply chain security and data integrity influenced how North American defense and public safety agencies think about drone procurement? And how has that shift affected demand for companies like Draganfly?
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Well, I would say, other than a couple of the obvious kind of table stake things that you have to have, which is an incredibly well-performing drone and an incredibly well-performing organization to meet military standard, above that, the capacity, security concern, supply chain management, strong balance sheet are paramount. You can come out with the greatest whiz-bang new technology, but if you can't produce 300,000 of them on a 30 or 90-day notice, at quality, with scale, with clearances, et cetera, you can't compete, because that's just what those types of organizations need. So when you opened, you'd mentioned it was fairly concentrated. And I think that's a very fair comment. Because the drone market is hot, there are a lot of companies in the space right now, but there are very few companies, very, very few companies that can actually deliver at this level. And so I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, and considering current geopolitical dynamics, ongoing technological change, how do you define the addressable market for Dragonfly solutions, and how fast are the segments you kind of focus on growing?
Well, if all the manufacturing base was there to actually execute on the demand, each one of the, let's call it 3 to 5 comparables out there that are, publicly traded or very large private equity VC, very large VC-backed organizations, each one of them would be doing multiples of billions a year, each one, and they would still not be meeting demand. Now, the reality is, the procurement cycles are now just hitting where we're seeing the orders come in. They've been 2 to 3 years of work for us to get our capacity to meet those, and for the specs or requirements of the specific drones based around the mission sets that they want to run. It's taken them that long to figure through their strategy, tactics, logistics, et cetera. And it's still going to be, a year to before we really see the hockey sticks, but we're starting to see the hockey sticks, start to inflect. But you'll see, companies like ours go from, meager 10 or $15 million type revenues to contract signings literally that are $100 million. And how do you scale from, a company that's doing 15 million to a company that's doing multiple hundreds of millions in a year? Well, you don't do it in that year. You actually had to pre-scale beforehand before you could win that contract to realize those revenues in that year. But that is how dramatic we're going to see these drone companies inflect right now. And the drone companies I'm speaking of are generally the NASDAQ listed ones that have strong balance sheets and have been around for a little bit. They're the ones that in our case, after 27 years, happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Now, can you kind of share more about your vital intelligence capabilities and other key technologies you're kind of developing to remain competitive while maintaining an appropriate, confidentiality around proprietary capabilities?
Yeah, so a strategic differentiator of Draganfly, because we have been around for so long, we've got such a strong engineering and software bench. We have been a military non-recurring engineering partner, for 15 plus of those years. So we have a ton of experience in delivering very specific capabilities to particular platforms, drone platforms in particular, usually much larger drone platforms, Predators, Reapers, that type of thing. But so along the way, many times we've been in situations where we've been developing proprietary technology. So we have a lot of unique features on our particular drones that other companies just don't have because they're still learning how to build drones, where we're actually learning how to build, or not, well, learning, always learning, but where we're actually implementing capabilities. So vital intelligence is a very good example of a very unique capability that we have. So on our particular sensors, we are able to, from the drone, read health signs. So we can read from a distance heart rate, blood oxygen level, blood pressure, temperature, heart rate variability. And so where this is important is in a number of areas. If you're out trying to monitor health of folks that you've got in the field, you want to tell stress levels. If you are doing search and rescue missions, or if you're trying to, unfortunately, maybe do recoveries or triage where you need to do a recovery of somebody that might be injured, you can actually start to get a sense of, hey, that person's partially covered. They're, are they even breathing? And so a drone can tell that from the air. And that's a very unique capability that we have. That particular technology is actually being used in game reserves right now to do health monitoring on animals so that it's less invasive. They don't have to tranquilize and things like that. But so we have dozens and dozens of those very unique things that when they're layered into the already, I think anyway, very good drone platforms that we have, people aren't buying a drone because it, stays up in the air longer and goes further. That's kind of what you're always striving to do that. But what they're buying a drone for is what capability it has. What data is it collecting? What ordnance is it delivering? What capability does it, or multi-factor capability does it have to deliver multiple types of logistics? So can it deliver not just food packages maybe to a unit that's at a forward operating base, but can it deliver pharmaceuticals or medicine into a particular area at a temperature that's constant? And so those are just the things that our experience have gained for us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the insight. And from a diversity standpoint, you're operating across hardware, contract engineering, software, and professional UAV services. I mean, do you want to talk about the revenue and kind of how it splits up between these and just talk about, the representation of it?
Yeah, so important to note that in the last 27 years, every single North American drone manufacturer except Draganfly has gone out of business. Every single one of them. And the reason there was the exception with Draganfly is that we didn't scale. So we didn't try to go after the mass market, the low end drone, that where folks like DJI and the Chinese manufacturers who are fantastic, can really, really dominate. We kept our business very small for a long time because we recognized there wasn't a market yet. We knew there would be eventually. And even though there was a demand for drones, but there wasn't a regulatory environment to allow the types of drones that we have, like this Commander 3XL, which is, about a 22-pound drone, carries another 22 pounds of payload. That's an aircraft, right? That thing crashes on somebody, it's, there's going to be serious damage or hurt. So the safety regulations, beyond visual line of sight regulations, they didn't really start to come into effect until 2023, which is when we really said, okay, let's take our experience and let's scale our business. So in that regard, the business has been small. And about 2 years ago, we capped out at the top of what we could from a manufacturing standpoint. We just couldn't manufacture anymore. So we've spent the last 18 months developing our specs and our requirements to meet the military requirements in particular, but also public safety and somewhat industrial that we knew was going to have to be met and meet the demand. So we're always trying to, good Canadian analogy, just always trying to skate to where the puck is going to be, not necessarily where it was at. For years, we only played where the puck was at because that's the only place the market was. Now we could clearly see where the puck was going. We built for that scenario. So while last year we only did, let's call it $7 million in revenue, we now, for the last 2 years, but we now have organic capacity, meaning what we can build just internally, we can build up to $100 million of product. And some of the recent military contracts that we announced, we couldn't even have been awarded those contracts if we didn't have the ability to hit those numbers. So we don't give forward guidance, so I can't really go beyond that, but I can say that is where we have scaled the business to be able to go, and certainly the market demands that are multiple times more in terms of sales demand.
Yeah, this seems like a pivotal time for Draganfly. I mean, from an investor perspective, what makes Draganfly different compared to maybe the competitors out there, and why is it a compelling investment opportunity today?
Yeah, there's three things that make us different. I do think a number of the drone companies out there are going to be very successful. So these are the things that differentiate us and will help ensure that we get a really significant part of this market share. First of all, we've been around for 27 years, so we probably have as much or arguably more experience in building the variability of drones that are required and the bench strength in terms of engineers as compared to anybody in the market other than, say, the big Chinese dominant manufacturer, DJI. So, and what points to the evidence of that is the fact that we have a full product lineup. We have everything from a small FPV, first person viewer is what FPV stands for, drone that can be a one-way attributable type drone, all the way up to heavy lift drones that are multiple times bigger than this one above my shoulder here that can stay up in the air for 7 hours, carry 100 pounds, sophisticated communications, sophisticated ordnance deliveries, those types of, and everything in between, where when we're training a particular unit or a customer on it, they've got a common operating platform, they've got common interfaces, they've got all kinds of different payloads that can fit across them, they've got interoperable parts, they've got, and that just takes a lot of time. So that's a big advantage for us. The second advantage that we have is what we call our ITS team, so our Integrated Tactical Services team. These are all former, tier 1 or tier 1 type operators, former Navy SEALs, Delta, et cetera, special ops that actually embed with units to go out and learn and drive and test and design what we need to build into our total platforms so that we're delivering not a product, but we're delivering a capability. And it just takes time to learn those things and gain the trust of the types of customers that we have in order to do that. Now, the third big advantage that we've got, which was never planned to be an advantage, so there's no strategy here, it's just dumb luck, is the fact that we're Canadian. So why is that important? We've been manufacturing in the States, we've been embedded in the States, most of our customer base has always been in the US. We have a US sub, a US board, all those types of things. We've got a fantastic, very, very senior board of directors that have operated at the highest levels of military and government. However, the fact that we're Canadian is now a big, big advantage because of the very unfortunate tariff war. So in the States, if you're going to sell in the States, you got to manufacture in the States. If you're going to sell in Canada, you have to manufacture in Canada. Now, when you couple that with now Canada committing 5% of its GDP into defense spending, that's 5% of the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world. All of a sudden, that is a very big number. Now, there's upwards of somewhere around $1 billion that's committed into small drone procurement over the next 3 to 5 years. And there's a parliamentary mandate saying it's got to be built Canadian. Well, there's one Canadian manufacturer that can do that, and it happens to be us. So that is all of a sudden as big a market for us because there's obviously less competition. Even though the market's not as big, that's as big as opportunity for us in Canada as it could ever be in the United States. And of course, I was born in Canada and very, very patriotic to the country as well. So the opportunity to be able to be of service in our country up there is a great opportunity for us. And so we're really excited about that. So I think when you look at the differentiators, those are three things that right now are very, very tough for anybody else to compete with us on.
On that note, Cameron, I appreciate your time, and we'll pass it off to the viewer as always. We'd love to know what you think in that comment section. Consider subscribing for news catalysts as it comes down the wire like this. Of course, we'll bring it to you here. If you want to explore Draganfly any further, we're going to leave the links down in the description. But on that, as always, we look forward to catching you in the next one.